Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting back into Extreme Carnage with Extreme Carnage Riot, which really has minimum Riot in the issue. But starting from here, we begin to get a few more hints about how this special case of the Void works with Carnage when we see it also happen to a couple other symbiotes. And really, once again, it's not really a new thing. It started with Eddie when he and the Venom symbiote separated from Knull, and Carnage did the same when he separated from Eddie. But with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping back in, we start off with Hank. And if you guys remember, Hank is Flash's friend, ex-military, retired, worked with Flash for a while at the shelter, who had also expressed to Flash that he wanted to get back into doing something with a bit more intensity. So when Flash later asked for his help to go undercover as security for Senator Crane, he immediately jumped at the opportunity, and doing so with being well aware of the risk that he's getting into. And really with the exception of him knowing that Senator Crane has actually been taken over by Carnage. But with him watching Senator Crane under the instructions of Flash telling him to keep close tabs and let Flash know what Crane is up to where from there Hank has seen a number of people who has sponsored Senator Crane and the Friends of Humanity, whether it be in the open or through dirty dealings. But then on top of that, with him being so close, he also notices that there's something strange about Senator Crane, with how he looks at him like a shark that's just ready to bite. But then on top of that, the guy barely breathes or blinks, which really on one hand, you can't really jump into conclusions with seeing stuff like that, because there's some people in real life who are like that and they don't have stowaway symbiotes. Or they might, I don't know. But in the case of Hank, who has very little experience with symbiotes, like he's none the wiser. And not long after, he's saved from this awkward "is the senator gonna eat me" type of moment when the senator's son Arthur mentions that their big guest is on the way and if he should go pick him up. But instead of having Arthur go, Senator Crane sends Hank to go and pick up their VIP guest. And so at this point, going back earlier in the day over at Alchemax, and it's here where Flash is trying to make sure that Andy is okay. And I'm not gonna do it this time, like I promised. But with Flash asking, he just wants to make sure, because this whole last minute bonding to save Andy's life, like that whole situation was real questionable. Oh, and just to be clear before I forget, because I noticed a bit of confusion in the comments on the last video, because with this new symbiote, it's made of what was left from Scream mixed with the anti-venom serum. So when Dr. Stevens told Flash that he had mixed what was left of Scream with another symbiote, so he then went on to say yours, he didn't literally mean Flash's symbiote, but instead the same anti-venom serum that was produced from your original anti-venom, which again is the same serum that had inadvertently created Flash's symbiote. So again, it's not directly from Flash, because up until now, Dr. Stevens didn't even know that Flash was alive. But with Flash questioning this whole new symbiote situation, he then tells Silence that he needs to speak to Andy just to know that she's in there. And when he asks, she shows her face just to let him know that she's still there. So with speaking to her directly, he knows now that it wasn't like a evil symbiote takeover or nothing. Because prior to this, the only thing that was like for sure was that this new Silence combination with Andy and the new symbiote is that they were willing to put the hurt on Carnage and Phage. But now he knows Andy's in control and she's good. But then right away with Dr. Steven, with him seeing the new outcome with Andy and the symbiote, he already has a ton of questions as far as like how is Silence different from Scream. Like he wants to know everything about this brand new creation. But at this point, when another alarm goes off and more Alchemax security is on their way, this really isn't the best time, and because of that, Andy and Flash, they just gotta get out of there. But just after they get out of there, it's here where Flash goes over his plan with Andy, and when she hears it, she pretty much hates it. Because for starters, Andy, she doesn't even know who Hank is. None of us do. But just from going off of what Flash tells her, it's like, okay, well this guy didn't do too well in the military, and he's your man on the inside who's supposed to find this magic anti-Carnage bullet. But then it's here where Flash tells her like, no, the anti-Carnage bullet, that's you. And Flash tells her like, look at what she did with Phage. Which one of you guys had me rolling, because you were talking about the whole finger on the lip thing, and you were saying Phage was defeated by a bum bump. And really, you're not wrong, because that's practically what happened. But with Flash breaking down the idea of Andy being the anti-Carnage bullet, because what she did was huge, because she effectively separated Phage from the Hive. And with using this method, in theory she could isolate Carnage and take the fight to him directly, which immediately spooks Andy, because she remembers recently with Scream, when Carnage reached out trying to pull the Scream symbiote into its hive, or by way of his hive, it was way different than any of her encounters with Carnage before. But instead it was like the Scream symbiote was being pulled off of instinct. But then here we're jumping over to a bus that's leaving Chicago, and it's here where we pick up with the Riot symbiote, who in its case we don't get too much of an idea of what it's been doing since King in Black, but with just kind of going off of what we're presented with here, it pretty much seems almost like Lasher, who is also kind of just hopping around and moving around from different hosts in order to survive. But unlike Lasher, who was only looking for like people on their deathbed, Riot is hopping around looking for whoever because it still hasn't decided to take like that moral high ground more or less. And when we see it here about the bomb of this random guy on this bus, it's here where Riot then runs into Carnage, who easily makes this connection directly to Riot, and he draws him in like with no resistance or nothing. But even with seeing this here, it's possible that Carnage could have started wheeling in Riot before this by using the usual broadcast from Senator Crane, like just to get him on the bus, but we're not showing that here. But instead we just hop in from the bus to the moment where Carnage connects to Riot through the hive, to where he then sends Riot to go through each and every person on this bus until Riot finds a host that's just right before making his way over to DC. And at this point over with Flash and Andy, and Flash let Andy know, like, I've seen you as Scream, I've seen you as Silence, and I've seen you as Andy. And he tells her that he knows that she can do this, and she's more or less like she'll give it a try, but if it goes bad, he can't say that she didn't warn him. But when she then goes into the hive to connect to Carnage and draw him out, there's nothing. Like, it's completely empty. She doesn't sense anyone else there. And initially she tells Flash that it's possible that Dr. Steven could have broken something when he had turned what was left of Scream into Silence, or perhaps the connection is tainted somehow, how she can't get through. But even still, with this being the case, she tries again, and with her trying harder, she remembers what the different symbiotes feel like, and with reaching out this time, she tries to feel for them, but she doesn't feel any of them. And just like before, it's much like she's floating in the void by herself, but this time with her trying to reach out to Eddie or Carnage or any of the Life Foundation symbiotes, it's way more taxing on her this time physically than if she were to just connect to the void. And when she does this and Flash sees like her nose is bleeding, he gets her to stop because he feels like he's been pushing her too hard, and he lets her know, take a break, we'll try again later. But Andy just tells him no, she's not gonna quit. But then it's after this where we catch up with the bus that we had seen leaving Chicago, only to find that it has arrived in DC, and it's here where we see that Riot, he's the special guest or the VIP who Senator Crane had been talking about and who he had sent Hank to go pick up, which now checks Riot off the list for Carnage's family invitation to slaughter the nation. But with Senator Crane sending Hank to go pick up Riot, it does almost feel like Hank, he's potentially in a bit of danger of becoming a double agent if Carnage is truly caught on to what Hank's doing. And I'm not saying it's something that will happen, because as of right now, there's only one other issue after this that's out right now, and without getting into it just yet, it doesn't seem that way. But it just crossed my mind, and I think it would be a pretty sick twist if it happened. But after this one, we then jump back over to Andy and Flash, where at this point with Flash seeing how drained Andy is, to where he's like, look, let's leave, we'll try something else. But then as they're leaving, it's here where Andy, she does feel something in the void, as if it's the presence of another symbiote who has just recently shown up on her radar. And so when she then reaches for it to kind of solidify and figure out who it might be, and as soon as she does this, like the first thing going through my mind is like, oh man, this looks a lot like Riot with the Carnage head. But as she grabs a hold trying to figure out who this is, we quickly then find out that it was Toxin, who had decided to drop in after noticing a faint tug from Andy in the void just after he had separated himself from Carnage. And we'll get into more about that in the next one. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.